established a great relationship with him. But there are 5 different clones that we work with, 6 blocks, each one basically 1 acre in size. And so it's interesting to consider, this process. We're making about 3 barrels from 6, 3 barrels each from these 6 different parcels every vintage. Here, I typically find this one in our portfolio to be a little more elegant, to be a little bit more restrained. Certainly, it's buoyant, it's vibrant here in its youth as a 2-year-old Pinot Noir just being released. Nice, buoyant, vibrant, red berry, maybe a little bit of a boysenberry type of character. Here with our Pinots, we're going for typically about 15 to 16 months in barrel. We're not too heavy-handed in our approach with the maceration. Typically, we're looking at less than 2 weeks, 10 days, 14 days, something like that. To not overplay that. We like the acidity to be structured, to give a nice backbone, and to give us an opportunity to make a style that will age beautifully for a long time to come as well.
Yeah, I love and that's one thing that I always notice with the Farrington from you and the team, Hugh, is that there's this really upfront acidity, and then it is that red plum, red cherry. There's a little bit of blue fruit there, but it is really driven, by tension that you don't get with the nobles. There's
the nobles is, I think, typically there's a plushness to it. There's a fullness. As we get to the nobles, we'll taste that second. Heck, I could even pour myself a glass at this stage of that one. Generally, there's more depth. There's more strength of fruit.
All right, we're going to keep our fingers crossed that it's just a small buffer here, and that Instagram is fixing whatever they need to be fixing on the back end. So hopefully everyone can still hear me. Looks like Hugh is frozen for a moment. But yes, the Farrington, if you haven't tried this wine, look at getting the 18th. So it looks like he left us, and we're going to see if we can try to get him back on. All right, Hugh. Let's see if we can. I'm going to text you. So let's see if we can get him back on here. And there he is. All right. It's saying waiting, so that bodes well. At least it's not punching straight off.
I apologize. I'm back. I hope that you can see me.
It's not your fault. It's an Instagram thing, so we will do what we can to work through it. So you were speaking. You were speaking as you were about to pour the nobles.
Right. I thought it would be good to maybe, as we were starting to reference the nobles, to have a glass and to have them both side by side. Generally speaking, there's a little more depth in terms of the ripe fruits, right, from the nobles. And I was talking about how often this vineyard we pick a little bit later. And so in 2018, a late harvest, we were picking the nobles at the very end of September and into October. Right here we are in 2020. Everything's picked. Right, we're done. But the Farrington was picked about 2 weeks earlier than the nobles. As we compare these two from the 2018 vintage, there's one clone that's the same in both of them, and that's the 777. In the Farrington example, we have the 5 clones, so it plays more of a minor role. In the noble selection, there are really only 2 clones. The Martini, which is an older heritage selection that brings a certain earthiness and a certain depth to it, and then on top of that is layered in the more vibrant fruit of the 777. But it's I think a really pretty example of this 18 nobles of what we can do there. We don't want the two wines to taste the same. We want them to represent their locations, their sites, and I think they naturally do that. We beyond these two, we make a small range, 5 or 6 vineyard designate Pinots each and every year.
Okay. So when did you start working with the Nobles Vineyard as a whole? Because I know
both of these we started with in 2009. One difference with the Nobles is that we actually do more Nobles fruit in our sparkling program than we do in making this one relatively small batch of red wine here. About 400 cases were produced in 2018. But beyond that, generally about 4 times the tonnage. So we might be doing 40 tons of Nobles Pinot this year in our sparkling wine program, and about 10 for the red.
But I believe, had you been working with the Nobles for sparkling production?
We started with
We
started both projects at the same time. So in 2009 we started using some for the sparkling program, and then in that same year we made our first red wine from Nobles. So that was really our first opportunity, frankly, that we had been able to crack open in the Fort Ross Seaview AVA of Sonoma County. There aren't that many vineyards in that pocket of Sonoma County, northwest, very remote, kind of high, rugged country out there. There's a little more vineyard activity certainly today than there would have been 30 years ago. But the Hirsch family is given credit for really kind of getting things going there probably back in the 80s. The Nobles vineyard, really more of a vineyard established, say 20 years ago. And then we've been working with it for the last 10 years.
Right, because I think, the closest vineyards in terms of proximity to Nobles would be like Wayfarer, a little bit of Hirsch, that's up that far north past Cazadera.
Exactly. And so, and people can picture that area. Frankly, it looks a lot like some car commercials that you may have seen where they love to run along the California coastline. You see the ocean off in the distance. Maybe the car passes a couple of cows. Maybe I've seen somewhere where there's even a vineyard somewhere off in the distance here. Maybe they were up on King Ridge Road, right, where this vineyard is located. But it's about a 2-hour drive from Schramsberg. It's actually south of the Anderson Valley, so you would assume that the Anderson Valley would take longer to get to. But no, it doesn't work out that way, because you're going to have to drive a little bit of a circle, actually, ultimately, to get to the Nobles Vineyard. Beautiful drive. But make sure that you bring your own water. There aren't any stores in proximity to the site.
It's like driving around Colorado. Some of those.
Exactly. Make sure you've got a full tank of gas as well, right?
That is so true. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the Nobles is so much more, plush. There's,
there's a fullness, there's a plushness to it. And it's interesting. You would, in some ways, you might think that the later ripening site would somehow be more linear and angular. I think that there's that but no, you're right. It just, and it doesn't work. There's something that I think is quite special about the soil there at the Farrington Vineyard. Now my phone just turned black, but you can see me again.
Right, I can see you just fine. As long as you can hear me, that bodes.
It'll still work. So if my phone turns black, I'm not necessarily pushed off the program. But anyhow, we're excited. We've done both of these for the 10 years since 2009. And we continue with both these vineyards here in 2018. We were successful. Actually, I can talk a little bit about that in the 2020 vintage. Obviously a challenge with the fire activity that we've had here in the Pacific Coast. Our Kiefer Vineyard was one site where over there in Green Valley, we ultimately diverted all that fruit into the sparkling program. We're not doing any red wines with the Kiefer Vineyard this year, but with that said, we're successful, we think, with both the Farrington and the Nobles vineyards that were a little further north. In the case of the Nobles, a little mostly to the west of any fire activity. But crazy challenge that we've had in that regard. We finished picking the Nobles on Tuesday, as I mentioned earlier, and you can see some of the activity that is happening in the winery. there are babies, right? These special sites, these special wines, and we get to produce them every vintage. It's a good reminder that despite the challenges we're facing this year, life is indeed good, right? At the end of the day, we have a chance to make Nobles and Farrington Pinots each and every year.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm really excited. But is there going to be, a drop off in quantity or yields in 2020, or is that still too early to tell?
Overall, yes, the yields are lower. Harvest is again a little bit earlier this year. We started with our sparkling on August 5th. As we look at the Farrington, this vineyard we were picking, we basically about 2 weeks earlier than we were in this 2018 season. 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, even, depending on the site. Of course, it's not a perfect math with every site. For the most part, yields were lower, which generally means that you're going to be picking a little bit earlier. We did have some vineyards that actually where the yields picked out heavier. Out towards the coast in Marin County, for example, this Redding Ranch vineyard this year picked out a little heavier than ever before. Meanwhile, Carnero Chardonnay light, Russian River Chardonnay light. People are almost grumbling a little bit. That's what Mother Nature gave us. And then you have a couple of these coastal vineyards, in the more rugged, remote coastal sections where frankly the vineyards outperformed what might be considered normal in another year. So the blanket approach does not apply. And I think with that, it's fun to have such a deep set of vineyards. So I really like to give people a sense for that as we discuss our sparkling wines. And then similarly, as we discuss the range of Pinots and Cabernets that we're also making.
Well, and to me, that's what makes Schramsberg such a unique sparkling wine house, in that everything is vintage. So, you do get personalities from vintage to vintage. It's
Absolutely
not necessarily a house style, although there's a consistency because of the number of vineyards that you're working with. And it's always great to see what's going on with some of the single vineyards and the still wines. We always talk about California, every year is a vintage year, but I think now more than ever, it's about finding those nuance in each vintage and what identity each vineyard has. And as I said that, we got a...
So,
there we go.
William, what I have to do is I have to keep pressing the button on my phone because it keeps wanting to shut the program down.
Wow.
And then I have to keep touching it. So I have to reach out and touch it. It's like every 20 seconds or so. So I'll just keep doing that. That'll keep me, it looks like that's going to keep me connected, which is
we want you to stay connected.
There you go. So I got to touch it. Every time you see me go like that, I got to touch that button again to keep connected to this program.
So let's
got me on my toes. I'm trying to do 2 things at once, 3 things at once.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Cabernet Sauvignon, and because this is where it all began, right? This is the origin story of Davies Vineyards. So let's talk a little bit about why Cabernet is at the winery, or at least
how is it happening,
and how that all began.
Well, and then the wine that I've got in my glass too is the 2016 J. Davies Jamie, right? So this is the pinnacle of our red wine making effort, and very appropriately, it's got my mom's signature on it. She is not with us today, but she was obviously very special to me, special to everybody on our team, special member of this Napa community. And so it's pretty cool. I'll show you the bottle there if you guys don't everybody else who's watching doesn't have a chance to see it. She had a really simple signature. She was very straightforward in many ways. There weren't too many surprises about my mom, which I very much appreciated. But with this effort, it goes back to '94 was really the first year that we would pull out Chardonnay vines and plant Cabernet. By '96, I was back at the winery full time, working in those earlier years as the enologist on the team, and making the first little batches of Cabernet. We also had some Zinfandel and Syrah, Merlot, Cab Franc, etc. my dad had us end up working with as many as 12 different red varietals there on our home property to try to make sure that we knew what the heck it was that we were doing. Maybe not surprisingly, Cabernet ultimately ended up being the varietal that we would really focus on. Today we have 46 acres up there on the property, some in replant mode today. We've assembled, there are four principal areas planted in the overall property, two of which we've acquired, one in 85 and then one more recently in 2017 that we've added to the overall kind of J. Davies estate, or Schransford Vineyards property there. So where we make the sparkling wines, we grow our Cabernets. And it just came about as we came to realize that we own great Cabernet ground. It turned out that we could make the delicious sparkling wines even more delicious working with cooler climate sites. And as we've talked about earlier in the program, that ultimately led us to doing some delicious red Pinots from some of those cooler climate sites. But on that home property, we had a different opportunity that wasn't part of the original vision, and that was to make delicious Cabernet. And so here, this 16 J. Davies Jamie, I think it's probably as exciting a Cabernet as we've ever made. The fifth vintage of the Jamie. Our first vintage of J. Davies Cab from the estate was the 2001. And as we continued to move along, eventually we wanted to cull out the best barrels, maybe 8 barrels, something like that, to do a very special, smaller batch of Cabernet, our special select, if you will. And so we named that after my mom. As you taste this one, 100% Cabernet. And the 2012 was also 100% Cab. In a couple of vintages, we've done the Jamie just with Cabernet, nothing else. 16, again, as we talked about earlier, fairly light yields that year. A earlier harvest, pretty easy year to get Cabernet to the finish line, right? Pretty easy year to get Cabernet to the finish line. And I think some of the critics are thinking 16 is pretty darn extraordinary as a vintage overall. Yeah, love this wine. To me, you're getting the real depth, the concentration of those berries. It's not just the berries, as they taste in early September, right? It's not the berries as they start to turn red and become quite tasty. It's now these berries are hanging out there on the vine a little bit longer. Honestly, the fruit starts to shrivel a little bit to dehydrate just slightly, right? You don't want to pick raisins, but there's that essence of just gorgeous flavor that is in the interior of those berries as they just start to dehydrate. It's interesting to consider. I mean, we're picking this fruit when the leaves on the vines are not vibrant green anymore, right? We're starting to see some desiccation. We're starting to see fall. All right. In this year, 2020, we haven't picked any Cabernet yet. Somebody in Napa Valley certainly has, but most of it is still waiting. And as I indicated earlier, we'll get started next week with the first of our Cabernet, which is a little bit on the early side, but not unlike this vintage. Here with the range of lots that went into the Jamie, we picked them between October 5th and 11th of the 2016 vintage. In some years, honestly, like 2010, 11, 12, a couple of those years were quite late. We were picking Cabernet into November, the last little bit. This year won't be that late. 2020 won't be that late either.
No, it's funny that you talk about desiccation. And, that to me, that's always been a challenge with a lot of producers in Napa, starting with, Larry Let 'Em Hang in the mid 90s. And, these wines are also getting into those 15 and 16% alcohol by volume examples of Napa Valley Cabernet. What's neat about this is that it's Diamond Mountain. We're still referring to mountain fruit. And I understand that you're on one of the lower, elevation sites, that you find in that mountain AVA, but this is very different than what you would normally expect from Diamond Mountain. There's an approachability to this Cabernet, and to the fact that it's all Cabernet. We're not mitigating tannin by, adding Malbec or other grape varieties. To have this softness at this youth, but still the power and the acidity and the ability for the wine to age, you
Yeah.
know, testament to what's going on in the vineyard.
Well, it's in the vineyard and it's also in the winery. I mean, ultimately, we are no better than our vineyards, right? We cannot make the great wine without a great fruit. So it's got to be in the fruit, and it and I, as I indicated, in our effort, we're really trying to get to that very special moment where the fruit tastes so just right, and now we pick, now we go, right. Don't forget that as we're working with our J. Davies estate, there are probably 35 picks. So that's a lot of different moments where we're selecting some from this corner of the vineyard, selecting some from another corner of the vineyard. We do not want all the picks to be the same. There isn't one endpoint that we're targeting for everything. It's supposed to be what we'll say, 26 bricks, that's where we want to be, or somebody else may want 28. No. We actually very much appreciate having a little bit of a range to work with. And as we go about harvesting the fruit and ultimately making the wines, there's no certainty as to which block, which barrel is going to reach that Jamie level of quality. We, having done this a few years now, of course, we have our eyes on a couple of corners of the vineyard where to be able to go through this process year after year. And as you indicate, in a year like 16, we're able to really achieve that plushness, to achieve that kind of targeted endpoint with a range of Cabernet barrels only. And in a different year, that might be more of a challenge. But we're excited to present this one. In my mind, this particular vintage seems to present the essence of our fruit in a more favorable way, or in a more successful way somehow, than any vintage that we've done up to this point. Anyhow, I'm excited. We're fortunate to have a good team of people working on this. I give a lot of credit to Sean and Jessica, the lead winemakers on the Cabernet and on our red portfolio. We also have worked with Celia Welch for actually, this say 12 years, and she has a nice touch. Provided us with a lot of good pointers as we've gone along to make that work. And in the vineyard, we work with Paul Arzuni that we talked about, working with us on the Farrington site and some other places up in the Anderson Valley, but now shepherding the program in the vineyard with our J. Davies site for the last 12 years. And so there's a good level of experience that I think is helping us. In the winery, we try not to overplay our hand. We definitely are not leaving things in context with skins forever, right? We want some extraction, but we also need to know when it's time, and let's so I think there's an interesting moment there where you identify that you've extracted the essence of the fruit. You may be on the verge of diving in deeper for more extreme tannic character. Whoop, know when to say when. I think that is also key. Beyond that, we're working with a range of coopers and barrels that each mark the character of the wine a little bit. You want to have a little bit of spice. It doesn't want to all be vanilla. Right? You don't want it just to be easy barrels. There may be, and so for the most part, we're working with things that will not overplay. But there might be a couple of barrels that provide just a little bit of spike of intensity. With the Jamie, good to note, William, is that here we age and barrel for longer too. This particular wine we release when it's 4 years old, but it's basically roughly 30 months in the barrel. And so 30 months in the barrel and about 18 months in the bottle before release. With our J. Davies Cabernet, and I would say more typically a Cabernet producer might do, say, 2 years in barrel, 24 months. So here we do extend it a little bit.
And the percentage of new oak on the 30 months?
Yeah, it's going to vary each and every year. As we look at this particular vintage, about 75% new. So not too much more than I think there have been some vintages of the J. Davies Cab where we've been that high. When we first started with our Cabernet, we were definitely a little lower on the new barrels, not wanting to overplay. And so we were closer to 50% new. But I think since the fourth vintage, we've been more than that. We typically get it up 70-80% is kind of the range for the J. Davies cab program. With the Pinots that we tasted already, no, that's more like 25-40%, somewhere in there. So a little less on the new, and obviously less time in barrel with Pinot as well.
I see. Yeah, one thing about having what I say two styles of wines that the Davies family is known for: sparkling wine in the traditional method, or Cabernet from mountain fruit.
Yeah.
There aren't that many producers that can pull that off, and
All
meaning
the
applying
above.
applying the sensibility. There are a lot of producers in California that seem to be, they try to do it all, 20 or 30 different wines from a multitude of grape varieties. Here, I think you get the you get that sparkling wine sensibility, with they're trying to be a focus of balance with the richness that might be associated with Cabernet.
I appreciate the appreciation, that you're sharing of what it is that we're doing. I think that with the sparkling program, we have a good amount of experience there. We have a good approach. It's worked for us. We're not afraid to continue to evolve, to expand. I think it's important to keep trying. It's interesting in a year like this year, as challenging as it is, and as there is, some concern about smoke taint, for example, and how the heck are you going to work with that? There are some producers that may not want to make wines, that have kind of already declared no, and then we're definitely not that kind of a team. We can, at the very least, we're going to learn from this darn year. How does it work? How can we fashion something that will work well in a challenging moment? We were able to do some delicious Cabernet in 17, frankly. Half of our vintage came in after those really horrific fires, which were very close to our home property, occurred. And obviously everything did not work. And then there were some trials that we might have done inside the winery to more gently press, to get off the skins more quickly, to keep the fermentation temperatures down. And inevitably, or in the end, we were able to pull together some really tasty blends. And I think that's an important note, even with a wine like this, Jamie, where you think, geez, it's only 200 cases, it's 100% cab. Yeah, but there were 35 picks that we worked with, right? We ended up making in 2016 probably 150 barrels, and we only needed 8. So darn it, hopefully we were able to figure out which of the greater set that we produced might enable us to craft something that would be really, really, really that special and age-worthy too. There's such depth to this wine. I have no doubt that we'll be enjoying this 20, 30, 50 years down the road. It's not only structured tannin that is required to allow us to have an age-worthy wine. And so here we're working with that notion of something that is, or producing something that in its youth will show its vibrant, attractive self, right? But that will also give promise for long-term aging.
No, you're right. For right around 5% of the total production to be put aside for Jamie, that is the definition of a barrel selection.
There you go. I mean, each year we're bulking out wine that doesn't end up making the program. That doesn't mean that those lots are not tasty in their own right, but as you're kind of aiming for that really ultimate level of quality, it's not possible to use everything, and you really want to budget. You want to plan that you won't use everything, right? That there is that latitude. It does create a little consternation as we work with our accountants, of course, because they're wondering, like, how you must realize that you're losing money when you bulk out those barrels. Yeah, but we're making money on the other side. But you could make more money on the other. But we can't put everything in the darn $225 bottle. And so we want to make sure that our $225 bottle tastes every bit as delicious as would be expected for that price.
That's the reason why every Olympiad doesn't get a gold medal.
Yeah, that's right. So we're working on it. We're working on it. No, it is. I think that, you know, if you consider, you know, that we're you know, we're a chef, you're an artist, what, you know, we're somewhere in between that, right? We're a producer of this product that it's not required that people drink wine to live. It's not required that they drink you really, you know, that those extraordinary expressions of wine to live. You know, the part of the enjoyment of doing this is having that opportunity to really see and taste something that is beautiful. You know, that is artistic. You know, that it is that special. And in there, I think you can see the translation from, you know, the sparkling wine concept, you know, over to this red wine concept. You know, I think what inspired my parents and as I kind of grew up in that that family, you know, with that sensibility, we have tried to take, you know, that same kind of mentality and then move it over onto what we're doing with these red wines. And you need to get the team around to kind of buy into the concept. And I think that when everybody is working in tandem in a common direction, frankly, you end up enjoying it too. Even in a year like this one where it's been tough, right? I'd be lying to tell you that it's been easy. I almost feel like you've got to find some enjoyment in that challenge, you know, and enjoyment in this opportunity to, again, you know, dig in, work hard, and craft, you know, the best that you can from what, you know, Mother Nature in this case has given us.
That's true. I've used the analogy of managing a Little League baseball team. You do it for the love of the game.
The love of the game.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes
it's that. Going back to where we started earlier, maybe 2 or 3, maybe it was 4 sessions ago, actually, with at least this last session that I think has been the least interrupted of the 4 that we've done today.
That is true. Well, we made it through. I think that, you know, we made it through the most important part. We made it through, you know, the wines, and to really get an understanding of what's going on with these vintage releases. So I can't thank you enough for the ons, the offs, the wonderful world of Instagram and trying to deal with technology. But did you have anything else to leave the team or anybody out there?
No, hey, whoever's out there, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for staying with us. I know it's probably been a relatively difficult program to follow with the interruptions. And if you've not tasted these, you probably have not tasted the 2018 Pinots and the 16 Jamie. Check them out when you get a chance. Delicious wines. Give us a shout, you know, right? If you guys are thinking about coming to Napa Valley, coming to Northern California, we're open for business, right? I mean, people are here. We're appreciative of that, and encouraging people to come and join us. We're in normally what would be normally a very beautiful time of year, and frankly, these last couple of days it seems to be a little bit of return to you know, kind of pre-fire or post-fire, you know, calm, and you know, the work continues in the winery, and the good results are continuing to be created.
Well, I can't thank you enough, my friend, and I hope to see you soon. You know, sooner rather than later.
Well, we look forward to it. I'm hopeful there will be a chance to do a little bit of traveling and you know, wine promotional work, which I've done a fair amount of as well over the years. Interestingly, I guess maybe I'm not complaining too much because my boots are more firmly on the ground here in the winery and in the vineyards than they might have been had I done the sales trips that I otherwise was projected to do.
Well, it's nice to get back to the soil, right?
There you go. I'm here all the time anyway, but it's here. I'm here like literally all the time. I've not left Northern California since COVID began.
Well, we might have some time for you up in the mountains. So
I've been to the mountains. I've been out to the coast, and yeah. Hey, It's almost October. I'm thinking about maybe a little snow up in the Sierras before long. So hopefully winter comes. Hopefully winter's here like it should be, right?
It
Anyhow,
definitely come. It will. I can assure you, it's going to come. But yeah, we'd love to have you in Colorado. We've actually talked to a couple of people here in town over the past 24 hours that would love you to sit around in the cellar and talk about sparkling wine and Cabernet.
well, we'll enjoy that. Thanks everybody for tuning in today, or should you tune into this program on another day? Thank you for enjoying what it is that we do and supporting us. Appreciate it very much.
Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
All right. Guys, we'll see you out there soon. And you will get the recording of this on our IGTV page. So definitely check us out for not only this, but in future episodes and discussions with our winery partners around the world. So thanks again. Stay safe out there.